on one level, you might say people do not need what we sell. You need food, you need heat, but actually people do need what we sell. And my old boss was just saying, in fact, just before, that archaeologists find jewelry all the time in digs from 10,000, 20,000 years ago. And in fact, the oldest piece of jewelry is 100,000 years old. It's a coral, some shells that were clearly used as body adornment. So we quite clearly do need what we sell as human beings.
Welcome to Retail Remix. Most people know Pandora for its iconic charms, but many would be surprised to learn that it's actually the largest jewelry brand in the world by volume, producing over 100 million pieces a year. But staying at the top requires more than just high-volume manufacturing. So today we're talking with Pandora's David Walmsley about the brand's digital rebirth and how the company is refining its omnichannel experience at a massive scale. Welcome back to Retail Remix. I'm your host, Nicole Silberstein, Editor-in-Chief at Retail Touchpoints. And today we're talking to David Walmsley, the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Pandora. David, thanks for being here.
Hey, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think most people know the Pandora brand, but I know that I personally was blown away when I learned just late last year that it's the largest jewelry brand in the world by volume. What else do you think the general population does not know about Pandora that they should?
Look, for me, I've been in the business 7 years, and the thing that blows me away is I travel around the world doing my job, and wherever I go, I see Pandora jewelry on people's wrists and necks. And just recently I was in a hotel reception. I said to the lady, "That's a nice bracelet. I work for Pandora." I said, "Oh, I love Pandora, and this is my daughter going to college, and that's my second honeymoon, and that's my dead dog." And the whole life is there. The story is there, whether it's on the neck and we sell moments, we sell love, we sell connection, we sell memory. And I think that's the heart of what we do. That's, for me, people who love Pandora kind of know that. But that's really at the heart of our story. I'd add also the other thing more prosaically that most folks don't know is that all of our jewelry is handmade in Thailand, in our 3 facilities. Everyone in Thailand, the heart of our business, 15,000 people making our jewelry. And it's all handcrafted. And when you see how it's made, it is really mind-blowing, the level of detail that the guys go to. So that's a bit of a well-kept secret as well.
And the scale, beyond just the number of pieces that you manufacture a year, you're also selling around the world. Wasn't it like 100 countries? You're sold in 100 countries?
Yeah, just over. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So the scale of the brand is just massive in a way I think that not everybody realizes.
Yeah. I think if you're in the States, lots of people there think it's an American brand.
Yeah.
And in the UK, where I come from, people think it's a UK brand, but we're a global brand. And the reach is there. We sell in thousands of outlets. We own something like 80-something% of all transactions are through our own channels. We have over 500 million customer touch points each year in terms of people coming in our stores or going on our web digital channels.
500 million?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, so that makes your job really interesting. Let's dig into how you are managing all that. So you've been really central to Pandora's Program Phoenix strategy. I want to hear more about that and what was involved. And I am kind of secretly hoping it's some kind of like espionage initiative because it really sounds like something out of a spy thriller.
Yeah, maybe make my life more exciting. But yeah, no, I think, so I joined the business 2019, and at that point, the business was shrinking. We were -10 on the year. We had a turnaround program, and we pulled a lot of levers. We put money to the front line. We focused on media strategy. We focused on our customer, our product, and so on. All these standard things you do in a consumer-facing turnaround. Mm-hmm. And it worked. And then through COVID in 2020, we really started to accelerate. And we said as a leadership team, there's 7 or 8 of us who kind of lead the business. And together, we kind of put together Phoenix, which is, okay, the turnaround worked. How do we double the business? And again, at the heart of Phoenix was the brand, which is a long-term play in terms of really putting foundational pieces in place in terms of the brand strategy, customer connection, etc. And then alongside that, another major pillar was digital transformation. So, okay, fine. If this is how we engage with our customers. How do we change the machine? How do we build a machine that kind of is fit for the future? And within that, Pandora's 40-something years old, I think about 45 years old. It's only about 10 years ago they made the choice to become a global business, because before that, there's a lot of franchise, a lot of distributor. So although we're the world's largest jewelry brand by volume and we sell hundreds of millions of pieces of jewelry, we're still a very young business. And none of the kind of technical foundations are in place, whether that's in our stores or digital channels or at the back end in supply chain, it was a big blank. We had no global systems. And so that was my part of the puzzle in terms of, okay, how do we do that? And also, how do we not get distracted by kind of really important, but maybe not quite so mission critical pieces of technology? How do we keep this focused on our top line? So all the time, how do we sell more jewelry? And in year one of the digital transformation, we had one objective in my backyard, which is we're not here to build this program or deliver this product or whatever. We're here to sell more jewelry. And that was kind of like really at the heart of Phoenix for us.
I imagine that is really hard working in tech to not have to to not get distracted by always kind of chasing the shiny new thing and really always kind of keep yourself focused on the core job at hand.
Definitely. And it comes in different formats. I mean, one of my favorites is what I call platformitis, which is you get a new well-intentioned person like in my team or a stakeholder, a great new marketing VP. We should have a new customer platform or we should have a new analytics platform. It's like, because that one's terrible. It's like, in boring business terms, okay, there's a huge opportunity cost of replacing that. And why change? What's wrong with what is this not doing? So that platformitis is quite a common disease in large companies. Well, we just changed the platform and everything. So there's different flavors of distraction, but that's one of my favorite bugbears. The other one is we've drove towards an agile mindset. And we've done that in quite an intuitive way. We haven't done like the big bang 5 years ago. We're now agile. But putting in place leading KPIs. What are the measures we want to drive? And I remember one of my teams, their first set of measures was, well, the outcomes we want to drive are delivering this platform and that platform. So, okay, that's not really how agile works. That's not kind of like, so just that cultural piece in terms of like, what's the outcome? It's shelf edge availability, it's customer satisfaction. These are the things that we're driving. And that helps with the discipline to help people not be distracted by shiny things. And of course, we all live in the shiny age with AI. So keeping that discipline still in terms of what's the core here? What are we trying to drive? And I guess that's a big part of the puzzle.
So what were then the central elements of what you deployed to reach some of those core outcomes throughout the course of the program Phoenix transformation?
In terms of things we've built and
what actual things did you put in place then?
Yeah, sure. I think, we started with the top line. So it was about my old stomping grounds. My career's 30 years digital was really accelerating the digital channel because that was the obvious lever to pull. It was very underdeveloped in Pandora. I think we've done a pretty good job on that, and I'll maybe describe it in a minute, but I'd describe what we've got at the moment in terms of digital channels. Very good. I'd describe them as top quartile transactional digital channels. So you know what you want, you can have a great experience. Something that's important to me is deliver on our promise, which is, the second half of the experience in terms of getting the actual goods to you. We've done a lot of work on that in customer service and so on. So that was where we started. I inherited, we've got thousands of stores around the world. We had multiple POS systems. I inherited this strategy of like, well, we need one POS system. And at the time, it's like, no, we don't. We need to stabilize the European patchwork. What are the 3 or 4 problems we need to solve? So we did a lot of hard yards in terms of store techs that we weren't catching our store managers out on a Saturday afternoon. And there's still more to do on that, but it's things like that matter. And then we got into the back end. So for our sins, we're kind of like, poster children for SAP now in terms of S4 and ERP. I didn't know what an ERP was 5 years ago, but now we're kind of like, I've been on a journey.
Yes, you've drunk the Kool-Aid.
Exactly, yeah. But it's really important. We've got a great relationship with SAP on the back end in terms of transforming how we do business from paper and pen in some instances. Our manufacturing processes with a lot of paper and pen and a lot of spreadsheets. And now the digitization there gives us this kind of powerhouse at the back end. So it's really front to back. And the biggest problem we have in Pandora is we just try to do too much. It's hilarious. Our willingness to take more and more on. But every part of the value chain we're digitizing.
So jewelry is such an interesting category, and I imagine it's kind of a fun digital challenge because so many of your customers are shopping for somebody else. So I'm curious, you mentioned like you have now a great system for when somebody comes to your site and knows what they want, they can find it easily. But how do you create a digital experience that works and has all those traits of good e-commerce, so like personalized, curated, frictionless, when the recipient is not the person who is actually on your website shopping?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think something like 60% of our shoppers are typically men buying for someone else. And speaking as a useless male shopper myself, what you want is the confidence that, is this right? Does this work?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of our in-store experience. And when you buy something from Pandora in a store, I'm fond of saying, half of what you buy is the thing and the other half is the experience, the confidence, you leave with your little bag and you feel really good. I've got something, this is going to be great. And going into the store, you're going to be able to find something that is great, for a good price. You're not going to be embarrassed about the pricing and so on. Yeah. So that's important. But what we found in COVID was, and I can't possibly give you our proper conversion numbers because stay secret. But let's say our store conversion is 40%, and these are all made up numbers.
Hypothetical, folks, hypothetical numbers.
And our online conversion is 10% and whatever. In COVID, when the only way you could shop with Pandora was online, we got this 5% up to 10%. And in-store was 40%. And that tells you the gap in terms of being great transactional digital channel versus the confidence giving you get in store. So for us, AI is the magic glue here. So we've been doing a lot of work on agentic selling. We started with agentic service. That's doing brilliant work for us. It's doing great work for our customers.
So like chatbot kind of style experiences?
Yeah, where's my order? Can I exchange this? Et cetera, et cetera. We put in place a service agent at the beginning of last year, and that's the deflection rate's like 60% now in terms of things that don't need to be resolved. NPS is, my comms team should keep me honest on this stuff, but it's something like 10% higher on NPS. So our customers are much happier, and it's a great service, and it's significantly cost effective for us. So then we started looking at selling, and selling for us is harder because you're selling memory and emotion. Oh, it's my wife's birthday. Oh, great. What's she into? Oh, well, windsurfing's her passion. Oh, and in a store, it'd be like, okay, that's a cool hobby. Why that? So, well, actually, she learned on our honeymoon in Hawaii. Wow. And then you're into a conversation and the things flow and so on. Now, if we can replicate that using agentic, then we're on to the next level in terms of digital channels. And also, we start to have much stronger corporate memory about who you are and what's important to you. Not just that what your email address is and what your surname is, but we start to know kind of like what your passions are, what your family's into, et cetera, et cetera. So our ability to personalize the experience is like a massive flywheel for us. Now that's the vision. We're in the foothills of that right now, and that's key to us. Yeah, really key.
Yeah, because that was going to be my question. Are you able to do this today online? But you're working toward it.
Yeah, we have it live in one market. We're going to scale it to 2 more markets. It's in one market at about 20% of traffic, and I'm not going to tell you which market. We're going to go live in 2 markets, I think, in the next quarter, and we'll be publicizing that then in terms of like this is where we are. The reason we're taking it slowly is that I was talking to Laura, the CEO of Williams and Sonoma, and they're using the same agentic platform. And Williams and Sonoma, the conversation would be, "Oh, I'd like a Dutch oven, please." It's like, well, you're in the right place because we're Williams and Sonoma and we sell Dutch ovens. So, and what size do you want and what color? It's a good conversation. It's a great experience, but it's much more rational and linear. When you're selling memory and emotion, that's much harder.
Yes.
So,
and less tactical. It's less like, what are you going to be cooking? Yeah.
Exactly that. And by the way, they do great things on Williams and Sonoma with the recipes and so on. There's some really, the agentic side of their business is great, but the actual product selection is quite straightforward. Our setup, it's much harder. You say windsurfing and it comes back with, in the early stages, it was coming back with some quite random selection. My favorite one was Thailand. We went to Thailand on our honeymoon. It came back with an elephant. In test, it came back with an elephant. I thought, we're onto a winner because that's a good connection to make. And then next to the elephant was the flag of Wales, the country, because it made the connection that elephants are very large mammals. Do you know what else is also a large mammal? And so it's a long journey. It's a long journey.
Yeah. Where else are you seeing kind of immediate value from AI for Pandora?
Really good question. I mean, we've got point solutions spinning up in key areas, things like review synthesis. So we've got millions of customer reviews. It'd be good to get sentiment analysis coming out of this massive sea of data. So there's lots of these kind of things. Forecasting tools with boring old-fashioned AI, i.e. the AI that's actually going to save the world, predictive machine learning and so on. So we've been building forecasting for many years using AI tools as well. But we stay focused on 3 big bets. We talked about one, which is selling and service. The one before it actually is the biggest risk in our business is designing jewelry women don't like.
Right.
Yeah.
Unsold
Bigger
inventory.
Than, tariffs or the price of silver or anything like that. That's the biggest risk. So how do we apply AI to that piece in terms of trend analysis, aesthetics, shortening the product development life cycle, etc. Second, then we've got selling and service. And the third one is automation, which is then how do we apply AI to our operating model, which is, I guess, my original stomping ground with digital transformation. How do we make an even slicker Pandora machine with
behind
AI?
the scenes?
And that's kind of like, that's interesting space. Well, I think everyone's in the kind of foothills of that. And we've kind of been piloting that in digital and technology, and everyone's geeking out on Claude Code and, Devin and so on, these kind of tool sets, which is great. But the biggest problem we have is isolating the value. How do you nail the value? How do you track the value? And the ROI piece going from a space where people think, well, this must be the right thing to do. And this, look, I did this thing in 10 minutes and it took 2 weeks before. So, okay, how do we actually quantify that, capture that, and either have a lower cost base or more capacity? But it's got to be one of those two things. So that's really the kind of like thing. I think a lot of people are struggling with that right now.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, AI right now is kind of the shiny new thing. It's hard not to jump at every new good demo that you see because some of them are really incredible. So you do have to stay focused.
The demos are incredible, but actually operationalizing them.
Yes, to your earlier point. Yeah. I've heard you mentioned in a couple of other conversations that you don't think that customers should have to be the glue between a brand's online and offline presence. And I kind of love that idea or that way of expressing the omnichannel idea. So in your world, then how do you bring together those two worlds for customers?
I'm still very much a work in progress. But when I said that previously, what I was kind of referring to, the experience we all have, which is you ring up a call center and you need to explain about the 3 calls you had before, basic CRM, or you walk into a couple of years ago, I walked into a store with a return. It's like, and that's a different business. We don't do online, so we've all experienced that. And I think, we're very much a journey, but things like real kind of table stakes stuff like omnichannel returns, you don't get that experience. Real table stakes like a decent, really good CRM backbone to customer service, which we've now agentified on top of. But we've got a long way to go on that. So I think in particular, we've done a lot of work in terms of creating a composable e-commerce stack. The digital stack is really fluid, and we're this kind of like space where the engineers can release it off their desktops. You can geek out about all that sort of stuff. Now, how do we apply that to the retail piece and reuse the things we've built in e-com in the retail tech stack? So then it automatically joins together. And we're not at this stage yet, but getting to a very obvious stage of like, you walk into a store. Imagine a world where a store colleague has an earpiece in, and that's the same agent that we talked about before in terms of talking with our customers every day online. And customer checks in and the store associate's briefed on the customer. Person who just walked in, they just bought 3 things with us online. They had a customer service issue last year. His wife's name's Mary.
Right.
You don't want to freak them out. But you can actually build in a lot of intelligence by linking together these things. But you get the demos on these things. You talk about exciting demos. But that only works if this layer here is in place.
Yeah, the data layer below it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. And the new program we're putting in place around unified commerce, which is kind of like the exciting kind of next stage. But
so now you studied history at Cambridge, is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
It is, yeah.
So first of all, I want to understand how you ended up as a CTO.
Yeah, me too.
From that,
yeah.
Okay. But more importantly, do you ever find any applications for that knowledge in the way that you build digital products for brands like Pandora?
No, definitely. Mostly medieval history. So
okay.
That's my geek. And if I wasn't doing this, I'd done my PhD in medieval history. But the bigger application for it, and the reason I mentioned medieval history in particular, is that any medieval historian will tell you people don't change. From centuries ago and actually around the world, there's certain facets of humanity that don't change. And I think at its heart, that human connection is what we talk about. Because actually, on one level, you might say people do not need what we sell. You need food, you need heat, but actually people do need what we sell. And in fact, my old boss was just saying, just before, that archaeologists find jewelry all the time in digs from 10,000, 20,000 years ago. And in fact, the oldest piece of jewelry is 100,000 years old. It's a coral, some shells that were clearly used as body adornment. So we quite clearly do need what we sell as human beings, to be really deep about it. And that's really what I get from history, is that that's always been the case. And we might all think we're, brave new world and so on, but some things just do not change in terms of human behavior. So.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of another conversation I had recently where somebody was saying every generation of humans believes they are living through an exceptional period in human history. And if you study history, you realize whatever it is that you're living through is not any more exceptional than, for example, what people in medieval times were living through too, and the evolutions happening then,
Exactly that. And I think it's very humbling really in that front. So.
It's humbling. And it also is, I do think, really grounding to realize that there is this through line, these basic things that tie humanity together through the centuries. Like you talk about those, yes, of course, biological needs that we all have, but there is more than that to being a human. And jewelry, it touches on one of those really important facets of humanity.
100%. That in a nutshell. Yeah.
So now going from history to the future, if you had to predict, tell us what the Pandora shopping experience will look like in 2036. So we're not going too far ahead into the future, just 10 years.
Yeah, just 10 years. Yeah, it's, again, things stay the same and things change. I think what stays the same is we'll always sell memory. and connection and love and so on. Those are the things that we sell. And so that's always going to be at the heart of what we do. And actually, we just announced recently with a slight structural issue with our business, the price of silver, which has tripled in price, more than tripled in price in a year. So we announced recently that we a big pivot for us towards platinum plating, which is great, by the way, because it's fantastic material, but it also has things like it doesn't tarnish. You can wear it swimming all the time, etc., etc. So there's actually some upgrades in terms of our product. Things like that change. That's a major change for us. But what stays the same is it's human memory, it's love, it's emotion and connection. So I think the experience, what it looks like in 10 years' time, I think the role of the stores is going to change dramatically. Like something I've talked about for the last 20 years in my career in terms of what's the role of the store. Do you see a future? Yeah, of course there is. Of course there's a need for a physical presence. But, really, like most businesses, we struggle with how we measure success. So what's the sales and conversion online versus the sales and conversion in our stores? We've got to get over that. I think we're kind of starting to make some good strides on that in terms of really, understanding that the digital channel is the shop window to our whole business. Most customer journey starts with some kind of engagement with the digital channel. So it's all those kind of things. And again, this thing of like consumers don't have any problem. They're shopping with Pandora wherever they are. It's usually inside the organizations about getting the incentives aligned and the measurements aligned and all these kind of crunchy topics. So I think in the next 10 years, organizations like us will crack that. We'll get through that and we'll be much more customer centered. We feel we're very customer centered already in terms of how we design product, how we tell our brand story and so on. But the mechanics behind the curtain, I think they'll start to align around our customer a heck of a lot more.
Very exciting. All right, now before we let you go, I have a few more kind of lighthearted questions, our mixtape end section here. The first one is, which is harder to get right, finding the perfect gift or nailing the perfect checkout flow?
Oh, goodness me. Goodness me. I think neither ever end. If you've got a good product team, they'll tell you certainly never reach the end of checkout optimization. I mean, goodness me, how many hours or days of my life have I spent on that topic? I think product selection, again, with what we sell, there is no real right answer. But really, I think someone's described it to me like personalization, digital personalization algorithms, so on. What you're trying to achieve is that sublime moment, that magic. Like, I love books. You walk into a bookstore, into a physical store, and you'll pick up a book you never even thought you'd be interested in. And those sublime moments, like, oh, yeah, of course, yes, I'll leave with that, thank you. And when we capture those magic moments, that's when we know we're winning. And so in terms of product selection, I think that's the kind of holy grail.
Yeah. So I don't think we mentioned this, but you work out of Copenhagen in Denmark.
Yep.
What is the best thing about Copenhagen that the rest of the world is missing out on?
Oh, man, it is such a great city. It is just the best place. I describe it as a very adult place. It's very kid-friendly, but it's a very grown-up city. Very small, very easy to get around. Everyone knows about the food and the coffee and so on. But it's just a very friendly, very safe, very calm. Yeah, you can party all you want, apparently, but it's just a very chill place, and that's and a beautiful city.
Do you speak Danish, or do you find you can get around with English? Okay,
I can say tack, and that's about it. Yeah, in Copenhagen, you can get around with English. I'm a classic Brit who's terrible at foreign languages,
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's a bit of a challenging language, it must be said. But I can say tack a lot.
Okay,
that's about it.
What's one book that every aspiring CTO should read?
Oh, goodness me. Lord of the Rings. I don't know.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, look, you can read all the kind of like sort of tech classics like Phoenix Project and so on. There's a good book called Accelerator read recently in terms of like functional stuff. I've got to say, right now, this morning, I was watching Simon Sinek's. I signed up to kind of like his platform, and I'm kind of like of a certain age. I'm 55 in 2 weeks' time. I think the main thing is just never stop learning,
Yeah. Doesn't matter what. There's no one book, but just keep going out there and learning, especially I imagine, I mean, for all humans, but especially in tech too. You kind of always got to keep your finger on what's happening.
Sure. And I think staying on top of, funny enough, we've got a teaching coming up with Google. Because I mean, I grew up in SEO land and stuff like that, like many. I think I'm meant to call myself a digital veteran. I've got another phrase for that, but I've been around a long time. So I thought I knew all this stuff, and then you get GEO. So I've got to teach him with the guys from Google just to educate myself, and they're very good at providing this stuff. And maybe I'm in a privileged position to do that, but just don't lose your curiosity. And you asked before about how on earth do you get from medieval history to what I do. I left university and I've got a job proofreading because I needed some money. And I started pulling on a thread in this electronic publishing company that did CD-ROMs, and I pull on the thread a bit more. And then 1994, the web happens, and I'm in academic publishing on CD-ROMs. So I could build a website. How hard can it be? And you just keep pulling on that thread. And 32 years later, I'm doing this, So just follow your passion, follow your curiosity.
Yeah. This one might be hard, but if you had to pick a theme song for the program Phoenix digital transformation that you've led at Pandora, do you have an idea of what the theme song would be?
1,000%.
Oh,
1,000%.
okay, great.
It is AC/DC Thunderstruck.
Oh.
Yeah? Because if ever I'm feeling like I come out in the morning, I'm like, oh, whatever, I've had no sleep or whatever it is, like stick on ACD Thunderstruck and it's like adrenaline in your veins.
I think we're going to have to close out on it just so everybody else can be reminded of it. We'll try to do that.
One for the kids. Yeah.
Okay, last one is, what's one historical retail lesson from 100 years ago or further back that you think still applies today? You may have already shared it, but do you have another one?
Yeah, I mean, my grandfather had his own chemist shop, a pharmacy, one-man band, 1937 in Bolton in the north of England. And it's know your customer. And do you think, that's really at the heart of this. It's like, what's important? Just really that. I mean, what else would be important? Everything else is our problem. It's not their problem. It's not, just know your customer.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you for being here, taking us kind of through the ages, around the world, and inside the world of Pandora. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for having me. Really great.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. Head over to the Retail Touchpoints page on LinkedIn to continue the conversation and let us know who you want to hear from in future episodes. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep mixing it up.